welcome here to the Newport Gulls front office. I'm Nick Lehman. We'll be happy to be joined today by the general manager of the Newport Gulls, Chuck Baber. Chuck, thank you for agreeing to sit down with us for a little bit.
Well, I'm delighted to do that, Nick. I can't believe we're having a discussion about the 2013 season and other aspects of the Newport Gulls. It comes on us so fast, but we're excited. We're a weekend away from our opening day and another Gulls season here in Newport.
Chuck, it seems like just yesterday the Newport Gulls won their league record 5th championship. Shortly after the season ended, of course, the team was named the #1 team in the country by Perfect Game USA. It was quite a summer. Going back to last season, can you just kind of recap the success of the season and what your expectations were perhaps going into that season to what they ended up being in the end?
Sure. As I talked about in many different publications or meetings, that I really thought that team last year was going to be special, but I really felt that pitching staff we put together was going to be what was going to carry that team. It looked like we had a bunch of power arms that would be able to translate well in this league, and with a supportive offense and good defense, I thought we were going to be very good. And perhaps compete for the championship as we try to do every year. But I really thought that team was going to be special because of the pitching. Ironically, we lost probably 4 or 5 arms just prior to the season that we had to replace those arms with. We replaced them with one of the guys that replaced him was Daniel Wright, who came back from the previous year, and he had a sensational year with us. He was 7-0, and of course pitched. It was all league and everything else that he had accomplished. But the team, that pitching staff, did not have the success that I thought it was going to have early on. They stumbled a little bit. Some of the freshman arms, the younger arms, weren't producing like I had expected them to. But what carried us in the early part of the season was the offense. And I wasn't sure that the offense was going to be that strong. I knew they would be good, but they were awfully good. And that offense was tough to beat on every night. They were pretty special. They scored a lot of runs. And then our pitching finally caught up with the hitting somewhere around July, where the pitching started to get real strong, and our back end of the bullpen started to become solid, and everything came together at the right time by the middle of July, where our pitching was outstanding, our defense was outstanding, and our offense was impressive. When you look back at last year, that offensive performance by the Gulls, I was waiting for it to slow down. We were beating teams 14-1, 13-1, 16-1. The numbers were incredible. So pitching is eventually going to be good hitting, but that team last year just never slowed down, and they had enough weapons, guys on the bench who were awfully good, as well as guys that were in the lineup every night. So that team was pretty special, and it showed at the end when they just ran through the NECBL season with such great success.
Now, there were offensive explosions, not just in the NCBL, but seemingly all across summer collegiate baseball last summer. How do you account for that? What do you think was the difference between last summer and previous seasons?
Interesting you say that. When I saw this offensive juggernaut that we had and all the offensive numbers in our league, I was at the All-Star game last year up in Vermont, and I had told a number of our fellow GMs that I think there's something different with the ball this year. Because I saw guys hitting home runs that were prestigious or huge home runs or far distances and so on. The home run numbers were going through the roof. The amount of runs we were scoring were impressive. So I just thought that maybe the ball was juiced a little bit, maybe a tighter core or something different about the baseball. And I took that as a mental note, and ironically, again, at the end of the season, there were studies done, not on all the summer college baseball. It was the Alliance teams. There are 9 different teams in the National Association of Summer College Baseball, including the Cape Cod League. The Cape, not the Northwoods, the Cape, the New York Collegiate League, the New England Collegiate League, the Valley League, and there's a number of others. The offense was up in all of those leagues. And how you tie that together, all of us are a part of this association. We buy the same baseball at the same time. So the 9 different summer leagues part of this association, the numbers were up in every league. That was that was convincing enough that the baseball was something was wrong with it. So Major League Baseball addressed this issue over the winter during our national convention, and they wanted the baseball investigated because the offensive numbers were really high, and they wanted to ensure that we didn't have a baseball like that again, so that they can judge the talent for Major League Scouting Bureau to make sure it's a little bit more accurate. So in essence, the baseball was a different baseball. It was identified through the cork. It was a different color. So our studies and my little assertion during the middle of the season was correct. The ball was different baseball than previous years. In all the 9 summer leagues that used that baseball, the numbers were up.
So the inflated stats certainly did create some very exciting moments, of course, in the season. But you think this season, the numbers will come back down to earth and more along the line of the traditional averages and traditional home runs totals hit for the season?
Yeah, that should be the case, Nick. You know, I mean, in summer college baseball, you know, if you look at the history of this league or even the Gulls over a 10-year period, you see consistencies with these numbers. But last year was really through the roof. I mean, you know, the numbers, the amount of doubles and home runs and runs scored were just significantly more than a traditional year in the NECBL.
I think back through previous seasons and look at the Gulls' success off the field and their philanthropic efforts in the community. One thing that certainly stands out from last season was baseball night through the St. Baldrick's Foundation. The Gulls raised almost $17,000.
That's correct. I mean, our mission has traditionally been that we want to support the groups and the communities that support us, as well as other nonprofits who need financial support. We're a nonprofit organization, and our whole mission is to help support other people, other groups, people that need financial support. So we sit down every winter and come up with ideas that where people who might need financial support or create awareness for a certain cause. So that is important to our mission, and that's how we sit down and organize and plan every game during the course of the summer. And if you look at this year's promotional schedule, it's heavily loaded with those type of events where we're going to raise money for somebody.
Now, of course, at the end of the season, probably one of the bigger accolades was awarded in that the Gulls are named the #1 team in the country by Perfect Game USA. Is that the pinnacle? Is that as high as the Gulls can expect to go, or is there something to raise the bar beyond that even?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to go beyond #1. The difficult in raising the bar is doing it again. So if we can continue to be the #1 team in the country, or even the first team in the NECBL, win championships, I mean, that's significant in itself. You know, being #1 in the country is awfully difficult. So the reality is there's only one team out of all the hundreds of summer college teams. It's not going to happen every year, and I don't want to expect that it should, but we can still fight for the NECBL championship every year, and that's an expectation.
Well, it's very hard, of course, to achieve that level of success. Probably the only thing harder then is to duplicate it. But so that is something the Gulls have done. 5 league championships now, numerous accolades both on the field and off the field. What are the keys to the success of the Gulls and the keys to winning in summer collegiate baseball?
Well, there are a lot of factors that go in as part of that process and to have that kind of success. A lot of factors. One, let's start with the coaching staff. The coaching staff has to be a good staff that understands summer college baseball, understands how to get these kids motivated, because they just played 60 games at their colleges. They don't get a chance to go home. They're tired, and they come here to play for the Gulls 40 some odd games in the course of 2 months. So to keep those kids motivated is a job in itself by the coaching staff. Then the players. We happen to get good players. And because of our tradition over a long period of time, the players come here feeling like they are obligated. It's almost their expectancy to have a tremendous year and compete for the league championship. Every team that comes in here feels it's their obligation, kind of. And it's not because that's something that we force upon them. It's because they see the tradition even before they get here. And they realize that they're playing for a team that has a lot of success, and they don't want to fail. They don't want to be that team that doesn't win 25 games. They don't want to be that team that doesn't make it to a playoff spot or make it to the finals. And they don't want to be that team that doesn't win. So I think that's a combination of tradition and great players that help us on the baseball field. And then the support from the community and what we do for our players here, I think helps solidify the fact that our kids stay committed right till the last day they leave here. We really work hard at taking care of them so they feel as though they have, it's almost their responsibility to play well for the Gulls and to try to win as many games as they can and win a championship.
You mentioned the local support from the community the Gulls have received. There's been support from the city, support from local elected leaders. How important is that to maintain the operation of a nonprofit, which what the Gulls is?
Well, you know, any nonprofit, you need community support. You need financial support from a lot of different people. In an organization like ours, it is strictly almost 100% volunteers. You have to get your volunteers and your staff and everybody else on the same page, and we're very fortunate in this community that we have a great volunteer staff. Our sponsorships are supportive in our lifeblood in terms of helping us run our organization financially, and we have a great management group, people dedicated like you and your crew to help us achieve the success that we have, and everybody feels that same passion. If you have that passion and your sponsors start to feel it, your volunteers feel it, the players feel it, and then it all comes together in one big picture that really helps us be the team and organization that we are.
Now, the economy hasn't been great the last few years nationwide, but particularly here in Rhode Island. But the Gulls have still had some of their greatest successes over the last few years. What's been the key to surviving the economic downturn that we faced in the last 4 or 5 years, and how have the Gulls still maintained a high level of success for that time? Most teams, of course, in the league don't even break even from year to year, but even then, the Gulls still exist, the Gulls still are successful, and the Gulls still come back year after year.
Well, it's like anything, Nick. You know, any business operation, you have to be financially stable in order to succeed and continue. We're very fortunate that a lot of people see the value that the Gulls bring to our community. I had a meeting this morning with the FOP who was sponsoring American Heroes Night, and they recognized and they, reiterated this morning that we need to support you guys because you do so much for this community. You give everything back to people, organizations. You're a great asset to our community. Therefore, we need to help you stick around and succeed. And I think that mentality or that thinking by members of our community help us survive every year. And it's not easy. You got to think out of the box when things are getting tight. You got to come up with some new ideas. You have to be creative. You have to reach out to more people. We're very fortunate to have great staff to help us achieve those goals.
Speaking of you mentioned the coaching staff earlier as one of the keys to success. The Gulls are once again bringing back their entire coaching staff from 2012 season. Mike Coombs coming back for yet another season as Gulls skipper, along with Kevin Long, Al Ava, and a new addition, Frank Holbrook.
Yeah, we're lucky. I mean, summer college baseball, typically you have a guy that comes in every year. It's very rare you have the same guy. And similar to our first 5 years or so, we had a different guy every year. And we had success. You can have success with different coaches, but in the case of Coach Coombs, let's start there because he's where it all starts for us. He's our manager. He's managed our club now for this will be his 9th year. He's the premier. I would think he's probably the winningest coach in the history of the NECBL. I would think, and all the accolades he's accumulated over the last 8 seasons. It starts with him. He understands summer college baseball. He gets the respect of the players while he still provides discipline to them. So his approach is really a good mix for summer college baseball. He has a great, respectful background. He coached college baseball, played professional baseball, coached in the minor leagues. So his background is pretty substantial and something that is respected by the players. And then we have great assistants, and this year we have Kevin Long and Al Ava returning for the 3rd season. Outstanding coaches. I mean, they could be a head coach on any other team. but they love what we do here, and they love working with Mike. So it's a good mix. And then adding Frank Holbrook to the mix is just part of our tradition of developing coaches and players and interns. He played for us last year, and he wants to get into coaching, so it's a good fit for us to help him get on his way with his career path. So we're delighted to have Frank back here with us.
One of the great drawers of the Gulls isn't just the success on the field, but it's the ballpark they play in. Cardines Field, a historic landmark. It's really been brought back to life by this organization over the last decade plus. How important is the ballpark to the success of the Gulls?
The ballpark is very important. I mean, I think that it's a lure for people, particularly in this town, because we are in a tourist community that traditionally the people on Aquidneck Island don't go downtown Newport on a summer night because it's tough to park, it's crowded, and it may not be the best environment for families and kids to go walking around downtown. I mean, not that it's not the best, not a bad environment, but Cardines Field brings them downtown to a wholesome environment back in some decades ago where baseball was just a grassroots game and community game, and I think that's kind of the feel you get when they come to Cardines. The other thing is you're right on top of the field, so both the players and the fans love it. It's like you're as close as you can get to the game at Cardines Field. There are other great venues in our league, but Cardines, I think, is the most unique, and it certainly is a great home for our team every year. You know, people walk in there and say, what a great place to be playing baseball. There's so much history here. So I think Cardines is a big lure for our team. It makes them feel like they're at home. They love playing there.
Cardines, of course, is old, does get a lot of use by other leagues, other teams. How hard is it to keep the field maintained, keep it playable, and what could we see maybe in the next couple of years as far as improvements to the field?
You know, Nick, that's a great question. We tackle that every year, and it is a problem because Cardines is a field that gets used by every organization. It's every night, and there's multiple games even on the weekends, so it doesn't get a lot of relief. In the city, the city is also limited in terms of the people that can work on the field. They've got to manage the beaches and everything else in this town, other fields, so it's not like they can focus just on Cardines Field, where perhaps in Laconia, for an example, maybe they don't have a lot of other things that they need to take care of, so the field gets a little bit more attention by the city. In our case, the city does everything they can to maintain what they can do, but the Gulls really contribute to the actual playing surface and getting Cardines cleaned up for each summer. Going forward from here, we've been trying for the last several years to make some big improvements down there, and one of the things that we have been working on is lowering the dugouts back into the ground like they were decades ago. And that will allow better viewing from the left field side of the field or the first base side of the field from the stands. The other thing is we're trying to always improve the physical condition of the field, whether it's the playing surface or the stands and the structure itself. So we have a plan to do some work on in that regard, but like anything, you know, it takes a lot of work and a lot of coordination and collaboration. So we need to continue down that road, and hopefully we're going to do something this fall.
Switching gears a little bit to some of the off-season changes in the NACBL between 2012 and 2013. It's only a 10-team league last season. We're up to 13 here for 2013 with new franchises here in Rhode Island as well as in Plymouth, Massachusetts and Saratoga Springs, New York.
Yeah, you know, Nick, we traditionally are about 12 teams in our league, and we lost two recently, 2 years ago, two of our franchises. So we went down to 10. 10 is not a number, it's a doable number, but when you start to reduce to 10, there's that possibility you're going to go to 9 or 8, and that's when we're, as owners, are concerned about the stability of our league. So over the last several years, we've made an effort to expand, but our expansion policy was not aggressive. Last year, in the last year, we changed that philosophy to become an aggressive group of of owners and a board of directors to find new franchises. And we sent letters to a lot of different communities, saw a lot of responses. And there were 2 teams that were ready. One was the Plymouth Pilgrims and the other was the Ocean State Waves. And then the Saratoga Brigade from New York, we decided to go into New York. And between all 3 organizations, we've stabilized ourselves again to 13 teams. And we're still maintaining an aggressive approach. In a recent meeting, I think we talked about some new possible venues. So we're going to continue to grow and stabilize our league, and I think that we're on our way in the right direction.
As part of that expansion, we did see a slight division realignment, and it looks like the travel time is going to be cut down a little bit for the Newport Gulls. A lot of nearby teams. Well, we've had New Bedford, but now we have Ocean State. Mystic, of course, was added a couple seasons back. A lot of short bus trips compared to, say, 5 or 6 years ago, where the division consisted of North Adams and Pittsfield, and a lot of longer trips in Danbury 3 times a summer.
And Nick, when you look at expansion, that's one of the things you're looking at, because we're trying to reduce expenses. And when you have multiple teams spread out in New England, the hope is to have less travel for everybody, because our travel budget's probably one of the highest aspects of our expense for a season. So what we need to do as an organization and as a league is to strategically locate these teams close enough to other franchises where there's potential rivalry and or limited expenses with travel and those kinds of things. So when you look at expansion, that's one of the things that you look at, and we were fortunate, Newport was fortunate in this given year, that 2 of the teams that came on board were less than an hour away. So that helps the Gulls tremendously, and hopefully it helps our pocket as well.
With the expansion, the Newport Gulls did lose, at least temporarily, a valuable asset to the organization, and your long-time tandem is in running the team in Chris Passos. He's still an owner here for the Gulls. He still obviously has a role, but for the most part, you've sort of lost him for the summer to the Plymouth Pilgrims.
Yeah, in some capacity, yes. You know, Chris will always have a hand or a say in what happens here in Newport, and he is a big part of what we do, and our success is directly related to Chris's influence on everything that we do, and his advice and everything that he does. He's great for the league, though, and that's where we're at right now. As a league, we need to make sure that our new franchises are successful. So Chris, recognizing that the Gulls are pretty stable and Plymouth needs some support, and he's the head of the expansion committee for the NECBL, he felt compelled to do what he had to do to make sure that franchise was successful, and he put his time in to make sure it is, and he's only doing it for a year. This is just 1 year. We need to get through some things without him, but he's still behind the scenes helping me along with some of the aspects that he traditionally runs, things like insurance, equipment, uniforms, baseballs, bats. You know, he's still providing some guidance for me as to what he's done in the past, but he'll be around as much as he needs to be, and he's also going to have to be in Pilgrim from time to time, or Plymouth, I'm sorry.
Well, the visual part of the league has certainly changed with the new teams, new divisions, new division realignment anyway. There's been some changes that the public won't really see that much, and that's the new league officers, the people that run the day-to-day operations of the league, that direct the league's direction, including a new commissioner in Sean McGrath.
Yeah, I mean, naturally we're excited about the leadership that we have right now. Not that the old leadership was not good. It was outstanding. The old leadership is, frankly, made the league what it is today. But we're in a place now where we're just not the only league in New England anymore. There's another league that's right behind us. And there's a lot of other things that are going on. And we are fortunate to have some younger and aggressive people who want to make sure this league is the best that it can be and the best in the country, are willing to step in and help guide us through the next phase of our existence. And you know, we've been around for 20 years. Every league in the country has to adjust to the changes in summer college baseball and the NCAA, how things are done. And we're just doing that right now. We're making a change for what we hope is the better. You know, we got a front desk now who they're all passionate about the NECBL as much as the last group, and they have a vision to stabilize us and to make sure all of our franchises are successful. So we're excited about that new leadership group. And they're all people who've been involved in the league in some capacity. I mean, Sean McGrath, our new commissioner, has been the GM up in North Adams for over 10 years. John DeRosa was an owner of the North Adams team, and he's an attorney up there, and he's an advocate for the league, so he does great things for us. And the other deputy commissioners and so on have all been in our league. Greg Hunt, for an example, has been a manager in this league probably for 12 years, longer than Coach Coombs. So when you have that kind of passion for the league guiding it, then we have a better chance for success.
Talking about the player recruitment process, it begins almost right when after the previous season ends, and it starts in the fall. You start looking at players, start maybe even signing some contracts, and then really gears up, of course, over the winter. And then you sort of have most of a team together, but then you lose a bunch of guys. What's it like going through that up and down process throughout the offseason and still coming out with a successful team in the end?
Well, you know, you recruit the team and it starts almost immediately after your season in August. And one of the things it used to be later in the year, but one of the things that's really pushed it quickly is the emergence of summer leagues all over the country. So now there's, you know, back when we started this process, there was probably, I don't know, 15 summer collegiate leagues. Now there's probably 30. And so if you think about 15 new leagues with 10 new teams, you're talking about a lot more players that are being selected for these teams. So that starts the process early, because all these GMs who are new, not used to the process, they start calling around in August. And then the coaches start calling me saying, hey, I'm getting calls from all these different leagues, Chuck. Before I start placing my kids, what are your needs for the summer? So we start to take that information in August. Chris and I go through them, and we have a policy that we have to agree, both of us, on a player. And he has his connections and I have mine. So our system has been successful. You know, we've had success, and we managed to recruit good kids and good players. So we go through that process in August. And then it slows down between October and January. Then we go to the coaches convention. And at the coaches convention, it heats up a little bit because we get to see all these coaches face to face. And if we have a need, then we can try to fill it during the convention. Then what happens, we just sit back and watch these kids play throughout the spring. I watch every single box score of all my players. I see how they're playing, where they're playing, if they're playing or not playing. And I address their situation at school if I see that there's a potential injury, perhaps. So I'll call the coach and say, you know, such and such isn't playing. Is there something wrong with him? And we usually start finding out things about our players in the spring in terms of, you know, do we need to make a change, or is there an injury, or is there summer school? And then the last ball to drop for us and every team in the country is around May to June, when kids have to go to summer school or realize they have to go to summer school. Pitchers need to shut it down because they've thrown too many innings. Guys get hurt and they need to rehab or correct their injury. And just other factors that might not allow a kid to go out and play. Maybe it's personal, maybe it's home life or whatever. So we typically lose, you know, it could be as much as 3-5 players between May and June. And we have a good plan B of players, so to speak. If they're still available, we go back and check with the coaches and find out if they've been placed yet. And then because of our connections and our network, we just immediately start to reach out to coaches and say, I lost a guy, do you have somebody? And we learned over time that we find a lot of really good players this time of the year because they think they're going to get drafted high and they don't. They're trying to get into the Cape Cod League and they can't. Or they just didn't make a commitment yet for some reason. So we find some really good players at this time. And to tell you a little bit about 2013, we just went through this phase this past 2 weeks. I haven't lost any pitching yet, but I lost probably 7 players in the last 2 weeks. That's a lot. Position guys. So what I did one day is I came in here and I sent out about 30 emails to 30 different programs. Some I've never done business with, some I do business with annually, just to get a feel for what was out there. And within a half an hour of those emails, I started getting calls back from UCLA, from North Carolina State, from Texas Christian, from Washington State, from all these different programs that said, hey, I got a guy, and he's good. So now it's time to select again, and unfortunately we have to say no to kids when that happens. So we regrouped, and our roster is strong again. But we're just lucky that we have a great tradition that people still want to come here.
Of course, the season's about 2 weeks away right now. We're in late May, and you could still lose players to the draft. You could still lose players in other areas, but for the most part, the team is pretty set. What is the 2013 team going to look like? We'll start with catching. The Gulls have had a strong tradition in the catcher's position. John Malacone, Chris Iannetta, Matt Iannetta, Sean McGill, the Melillo brothers over the last 4 years. What are we going to see this year at the catching position for the Newport Gulls?
Well, of course, your catching position has to be a strong one, Nick, and Chris Patsos is very good at that because he was a catcher. So he helps in that process, but this year's team can still change. I still can lose guys, and when you look at our roster, we're loaded with talent from teams that are doing awfully well this year. So there's a chance that these teams are going to go on to a regional or super regional or perhaps the World Series. So some of these kids we may not see for a while. So we'll have to find temporary players and/or maybe perhaps a permanent guy here or there. But let's break down the catching. We have 3 catchers signed. 2 of them are have had successful. 3 of them have had successful summer seasons, and that's something that we look at. Austin Barr is a high-profile catcher from Stanford. All the scouts that I've talked to say he's a guy that's going to be pretty special. And as a high school senior, he went to the West Coast Collegiate League last year and was rated as one of the top prospects in that league, major league prospects, and one of the best hitters. So he already accomplished what he needed to do in summer ball at a young age. So we think he's going to be pretty good. And then you go to the Arizona State kid, Nate Causey, was also listed in that same West Coast Collegiate League where you went last summer as one of the top major league prospects. Both of those kids were drafted out of high school. One's a right-handed hitter, one's a left-handed hitter. And then the third catcher that we have is also somebody who's new to catching at the collegiate level. He's just starting to catch this past year, is Ethan Ferreira from Harvard. But he's a talented kid and a strong kid. He could play third. He could probably play the outfield for us. He played the outfield at Harvard. So he's a little bit more flexible. But he also offers the depth that we need behind the plate. As you know, guys get hurt from time to time, and particularly this year, if ASU goes deep into the tournament and Stanford goes deep, then Ethan's going to be doing a lot of catching. So our catching staff is strong. Our infield is strong. We've lost 4 shortstops since we started this process, but the guy that we just finalized with Washington State was going to go to the Cape, but he's coming here, and he's pretty special. So we reloaded there, and we got a good kid and a good prospect, and our outfield's awfully strong. So we've managed to
outfield, but that's an area that you never really know what's going to happen. We'll have a guy like E.R. Rosen or Kyle Hankard who, in their collegiate season, may have hit 1 home run, but they'll come to Newport and they'll set records in home runs or slugging percentage or batting average. Is it less predictable when you're looking at your outfielders versus, say, your infielder or your catcher or your pitching staff?
No, I don't think it's any different. I mean, you'll find infielders that come here who don't get a chance at their school or fail because of the pressure that they have at their school. And if you don't succeed right away, then you might be sitting for a long time. But here, you can fail 1 or 2 games, and we're still going to throw you out there at summer college baseball. So they loosen up a little bit. They feel less stress here. It's summer baseball, but they learn to get their confidence, and that is the biggest thing that these kids adjust over the course of a year. Is honing their skills, but then learning how good they can be. Like Yale Rosen, he didn't get much of a chance at school last year as a freshman, But he came here and he was a man amongst boys, and you see how good he was. And now he's back at school, and you see the year he's having. He's had a tremendous year at Washington State. He's leading his team in hitting. He's leading his team in home runs. And that kind of translates from the success he had here and the confidence they build and go back and take it to the respective schools. And frankly, that's one of the things that college coaches like about the Newport Gulls. They want to send their kids here because they know that we're going to take good care of them and help them develop their confidence for them to go back to school. Another kid like Yale Rosen is Austin Slater. Went to Stanford last year, had minimal at bats, maybe, I don't know, 10 as a freshman. Came here and he was outstanding. What a great player. Goes back to Stanford, now he's hitting two in the 2-hole and 3-hole every game for them. So that translates that confidence that they get when they come here. They realize they're good and they have a great year. Another kid that comes to mind is Casey Kaufman. He struggled at Arizona State last year as a sophomore. He hit, what, 230? Didn't play all the time. Came here, and you see the physicality of that kid. 6'4", runs a 6'7". He's tools coming through, coming out of this body of his, and he's great mental approach to the game. I watched this kid play, and he had to figure out how good he could be, and he progressed tremendously. Now you look at his season at Arizona State, he's the leadoff hitter for them. He's hitting 330. He's got a lot of doubles and home runs, and he steals bases, and he's the catalyst that makes that team one of the top 10 teams in the country. So when you look at the success they have here and how it translates when they leave, it's one of the things we're proud about.
At the major league level, most of the big contracts go to the number 1, number 2 starting pitchers, and they go to that big offensive hitter. But one of the least heralded aspects of the game is defense. When you look at recruiting in infield and looking at a double play combination, the Gulls, of course, have historically been among the leaders in double plays during the league. Some years there's been off years defensively for the Gulls for a variety of reasons, and it's come back to hurt them in the playoffs. Other years, though, the Gulls have set league records in fielding percentage. Do you look for guys that are able to gel and work together despite the fact that they may never have worked together before, or do you look for guys that are just independently good defensively, or some sort of combination?
Well, you really can't anticipate two guys being the best two guys together until they get here. So you go find the best shortstop you could find, the best second baseman you could find, the best third baseman you could find, and that should translate to guys being able to work together because they're that skilled. So we find the best guys we can find for those positions. And shortstop this year, we lost quite a few already. Dansby Swanson from Vanderbilt, Tom Verdi from UConn, Scotty Birchman from Sacramento State. These are 3 guys we had signed that were going to come here, and they were pretty good. But again, we found another great shortstop. But to your defensive point, Nick, you're right on. In 07 and 08, we had 2 very good teams. Offensively, 08, that team was really good. But defensively, we weren't strong. In 07, we had some guys out of position. We had an outfielder playing third base or second base. We had a first baseman playing second base. So that doesn't translate as well when you need to be prepared for a championship run. We made it to the finals in both of those years, but if you remember, our defense wasn't really strong in terms of having outstanding defensive players who actually play those positions year-round in their college season. That's different. The following year, 08, we had a couple of guys that we lost our shortstops during the course of the summer. Cody Grissom had to go home for some academic stuff, and then we found Kenny Socorro, and we brought him up here, and Kenny had to leave for a family vacation at the end of June, or the end of July, just before we got to the playoffs. And then, so we're short a shortstop. I had to call Cody Grissom and fly him back up here from Tennessee. That we weren't real stable defensively, and that cost us. If you remember when we were up in Sanford in the second game of the playoffs up there, we were ahead, we were up, and defensively we booted 2 balls on the left side of the infield that caused us some problems, and then a ground ball to our first baseman with 2 outs that went through his legs that ended up costing us 3 runs, and we lost the championship. So we made a conscientious effort to make sure we get enough shortstops every year, guys who can play the middle, can go to second or third, and be a better defensive team in the infield, and we've done that. And if we look back on our championship teams, Nick, that 2005 team, Afrani and Hagstrom on the left side were outstanding, as well as our second baseman in '05, in our first base, and we were really good, but we were defensive. In '09, we had an outstanding defensive team in Tim Smalling and Joey Bergman and David Benchrod, and you had a kid like Garcia, who's almost in the major leagues right now, playing second. You know, we were really good defensively. And then you look at our squad last year in 2012, that team was very good defensively. You know, we had Slater at third. He was almost automatic. Our shortstop was pretty special. Our shortstops were special. They did a great job. Our second baseman, Connor, I mean, he was outstanding, a leader. You know, so you could see the years that we win championships, we've always been very defensive. So that's our goal.
So what will we see here in 2013?
You're going to see another defensive team. I mean, Trace Tam Singh, our shortstop, will be very good. Our second baseman's very good. Our third baseman's very good. And we just recently signed yesterday Adrian English from Barry University, who is a shortstop in college. He can play second and third, and he played in this league last year for North Adams. He had .337, and this year he's had an outstanding year at Barry University. So we feel as though he's going to be a good fit for us defensively. He plays all positions well, and we're going to be good defensively again. It's just a priority for us.
Pitching staff. That's always something that's not really known. As you mentioned, even last season, we wouldn't really know who was going to be where in the rotation versus the bullpen versus closer until late June, even early July. What are we looking at for this season for the Gulls as far as starting pitchers, and who are you looking at as far as relievers and perhaps even a closer from out of the gate?
You know, Nick, when I build this team every year, I have an idea, but that doesn't always translate to the season, you know, because guys have difficulties, guys make adjustments, guys need to pitch less innings or more innings. And then it really comes down to bringing in 12 or 15 really outstanding arms, and for the coaching staff to figure out who is the best 4 or 5 starters, who will fit that role in the middle, and then who will close at the end. And if we bring enough dynamic arms in here, we can kind of build that little infrastructure where we get a good group of starters and so on. But some of it, Nick, is dictated by the coaching staff at the schools. For an example, a coach may tell us, Ray Castillo from Alabama, he's thrown too many innings. I want to limit his innings this summer. So just pitch him 2 innings once a week. We may have another coach that says to me, well, you know, I'm saying you what I think is going to be a starter next year for us. We'd like to see him extend it out a little bit, stretch it out a little bit and get more innings, and maybe he can be a starter for you. And I tell everybody, we tell the kids here, you're all great pitchers, but we only have 5 starters, we need relievers, and we need closers. So inevitably they got to buy into wherever role they get, and some of them would prefer to start, and they're not going to start because they're not one of the better guys that are here. And then the big piece of that, Nick, is really going through a season and seeing who really fits in which role. You can guess in the beginning and you throw guys out there, but then you realize after about a month, in July, you really can start to figure out that guy's is one of our best guys. That guy's another starter. This guy's better in relief. This guy's got dynamic stuff and he's a closer. So you kind of can, by July, you kind of put those pieces in where they're supposed to be.
What do the players really get out of this in the end? We know, you know, they have fun when they come to Newport. They take them on cruises out on the harbor, and they get celebrities around town while they're here. We know that, you know, professionally, the Gulls players, by and large, go on to play pro ball. We've had over 150 alumni of the Gulls make it to at least pro ball at some level. But ultimately, what is it? What's their reason for coming here, and what are they looking to get out of their experience with the Gulls in the summer?
Well, it's a combination of what the school and the coach is looking for, and then the player. So they're looking to hone their skills to get better at their craft because they want to increase their probability for the draft or the position in the draft. So they want to come here and showcase their skills. Our job is to help them find that success. both on and off the field. We need to make sure that they work hard at their skill here. We give them all the extra work they need. We give them a membership to the YMCA where they can work on their strength and stay strong. We have a great medical staff here to make sure they're healthy. So our job is to make sure that these guys get the best possible experience they can get, because if you continue to do that over time, you're going to create a situation where everybody wants to come here. It's kind of where we're at now. You know, we've had success and a lot of players want to come here, and you know, we're reviewing 1,000 players and we only have 30 spots, so you have to say no a lot. So our goal is to make sure we take care of these kids in the best way we can so they perform both on and off the field. They're good kids, they're healthy, and they have an opportunity at the Major League Draft when their time comes. If we do that and they do their end, they have a better chance of success, and then it's just more success for our organization and the league.
On the other side, of course, you and your ownership group have been doing this for a long time now. What do you get out of this in the end? You're sort of the face of the Gulls nationally. Everyone knows Chuck Paver, and your name is synonymous with the Newport Gulls' success. But of course, it's a full organization. But what keeps you individually coming back year after year, putting this year-round commitment to put this whole organization together, keep it not only running and functional, but elevated from year to year?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you, because that rambles through my mind every year. How do I continue to maintain what I'm doing at the level that I do it at? In the early years, both Chris and I did all the work, most of the work, and we had support from a few, but most of the work was done by us. And when you build an organization, especially a volunteer organization, you really have to make sure you have a volunteer base that's going to be committed to what we're trying to accomplish here. And over the years, people have bought in because they've seen the success both on and off the field here in Newport. It makes it a little easier for me, but I'll tell you what drives me every year, Nick, is that this time of the year I sit here in my office, or I sit here, I'm running around doing Gull stuff from time to time. A little less now than previous years, but I still have to do a lot. And I get to this point and I question, what am I doing? This is a lot of work for no financial gain. We don't take a penny from this operation. So what's my reward? I'll tell you what my reward is. My reward every year is from July on, when you see things slow down, get more routine, and you're not going as crazy, but you see the people that come into Cardines Field, you see all the faces that come through, the children and the people you affect in a positive way. When our team goes and does summer camps, when our team goes and does reading programs, when we raise money for somebody who has died, we raise money for a military family, we raise money for somebody who has an illness. And our St. Baldrick's night last year was a climax of that, where if you didn't have a tear in your eye, you almost don't have a heart, because this is raising money for kids' cancer, and everybody is touched emotionally by that terrible disease. So that is what drives me every year, that the reward of the success that we have, the reward of being around these players every summer, these special kids who make the Gulls what they are and buy into everything that we do here. And so at the end of the year, you feel the success that you've done, and it kind of rejuvenates your thinking that, you know, this is something special. Now, to really put this into perspective for you, it's like raising a baby from its infancy, and then it gets to a teenager, and it's a wonderful human being, does great things. It's hard to give it up, Nick. It's your kid. So you don't want to give it to somebody who's going to screw it up. So you say every year, you know, we got to fight again, or we got to rejuvenate ourselves and get the energy to get after another season. And here we are again, a week and a half away. We got a lot of work to do. I feel overwhelmed from time to time, but I know in the end of this season we're going to do some really special things for a lot of people. So that's what drives me. It's not about the money, it's about the passion. Passion drives me. Reward drives me. Reward for helping people. And that's what drives me every year. And having great teams, meeting great people, changing their lives, and it's just who we are. It's who we are.
Well, Jeff Faber, thank you very much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you.
And of course, I can find out much more about the Newport Gulls via newportgulls.com, and we hope you'll stay tuned to the Newport Gulls all summer long.